When divorce arrives after 50, it arrives inside a financial life that has been built for two. Not just shared accounts and joint property, a shared financial architecture. Two incomes, or the planning built around two incomes. Two sets of Social Security benefits factored into a retirement projection. A retirement timeline that assumed two people moving through it together. The dissolution of the marriage dissolves all of this simultaneously, and the financial rebuilding that follows is not simply the task of dividing what exists and managing each half. It is the task of constructing an entirely new financial architecture for a single life, from a starting point that is further along in time than the equivalent starting point would have been at 30 or 35, with a shorter runway to retirement and a set of decisions whose consequences compound for longer than the runway allows easy course correction. My name is William Grant, and the thing I want to name at the outset, because it is the thing most people don't hear clearly enough in the immediate aftermath of a late divorce, is that the rebuilding is genuinely possible. Not possible in the way that consolation is possible or hope is possible, possible in the measurable, arithmetic sense that the specific decisions available to someone in their 50s, made with the right information and the right sequence, can produce a financially stable and independently viable life within a time frame that is not unreasonably long. The path is specific, the decisions are identifiable, and the beginning of the path is a complete, honest inventory of what exists on both sides of the dissolved partnership. I worked with a woman named Rosalind, 54 years old, a hospital administrator, divorced after 22 years of marriage. Her financial situation at the point of divorce was not catastrophic. She had meaningful retirement savings, kept the family home in the settlement, and maintained a professional income. What she lacked was the integrated view of her position as a single financial unit. She had always experienced the finances as a shared system and had never needed to map her individual position within it with precision. The inventory we built together was the first time she had seen her complete financial picture as a sole entity. Her assets, her liabilities, her income, her expenses, her retirement timeline as a single person rather than half of a couple. What it revealed was both more challenging and more workable than she had feared. The challenges were real and required real decisions. The workability was also real, and it came from seeing the position clearly rather than experiencing it as an undifferentiated emotional weight. The first set of real decisions concerned the house. Keeping the family home in a divorce settlement is one of the most common financial mistakes I observe in late divorce situations. And the mistake is not irrational. The home represents stability, continuity, the physical place where the life was built. But the financial logic often runs in the opposite direction. A house that requires the income of two people to carry comfortably cannot be maintained on one person's income without consuming a disproportionate share of that income in housing costs, leaving inadequate cash flow for retirement savings and financial reserves. Rosalind's mortgage payment, property taxes, and maintenance costs together consumed 41% of her take-home income. That left 59% for everything else: food, transportation, health care, retirement contributions, the emergency reserve she did not yet have. The numbers did not leave room for adequate retirement contributions. The emotional attachment to the house was real and entirely understandable. The financial case for transitioning to a property sized for one income was equally real, and it was the decision that unlocked the rest of the rebuilding. The second set of decisions concerned the retirement timeline and the Social Security strategy. Rosalind had been planning, in the context of the marriage, to retire at 64. In the context of her single-income financial position, that timeline required recalibration, not abandonment, but recalibration around a realistic assessment of what her single income savings rate could produce by 64, and whether that production was adequate for a retirement that would rely entirely on her own accumulated resources without a partner's income or benefits as supplemental support. The answer, modeled honestly, suggested 67 as a more realistic target, not because she lacked capacity to save, but because the years of shared financial life had produced a retirement position designed for two, and rebuilding it for one required more time at the current savings rate than the original timeline assumed. Naming 67 honestly, rather than maintaining 64 as a goal that the numbers did not support, was the decision that made the planning real rather than aspirational. Rosalind sold the house 2 years after the divorce. The equity, redeployed into a rental and an investment account, reduced her housing cost, increased her savings rate, and changed her retirement trajectory materially. The decision was not painless, it was correct. And the difference between those two things, painful and correct, is frequently the distance between what a late divorce requires and what it feels like it requires in the immediate aftermath. The feelings are real. The financial decisions have to follow the analysis. What I want to leave you with is a single concrete step, not a general instruction. If you are rebuilding from a late divorce, open a piece of paper and write down your monthly income and your monthly fixed expenses, housing, insurance, debt payments, utilities. Calculate the percentage of your income that fixed expenses consume. If that percentage is above 40%, the first decision your rebuilding requires is not an investment decision. It is a housing decision. Everything else in the rebuilding depends on having cash flow available to work with. Start there.